Hello, my name is Alexander Harriman,
My name is Kirsten Gramajo.
and our presentation is investigating the effect that pitch velocity has on a batter's exit velocity. And this idea came while watching the 2024 Home Run Derby this past season at Globe Life Field. Now, the Home Run Derby, as it does most years, has some of the best power hitters in baseball taking aim for the upper decks and the farthest parts of its ballpark. But one thing that caught our attention was how, despite playing in a closed stadium with a park that has been favorable to hitters according to park factors, competitors struggle to hit the ball farther than they sometimes do in live games. The farthest hit ball was a 473-foot homer from Marcelo Zuna, who himself has hit 479 in a game. And despite Shohei Ohtani hitting 493 in a game in 2023 and hitting the second deck in Globe Life Field the same year, he didn't surpass that number either, that 473. So we were wondering, the difference between the home run derby and live games is the speed of the pitches. For the most part, most soft toss comes from the home run derby. While in games, unless you're facing a position player, you're facing a major league pitcher with major league velocity. So does pitch velo affect a batter's exit velocity, or are more other factors more important to this discussion?
So for this presentation, the data that we utilized was the MLB pitch-by-pitch data from the Stats API dating back to 2022. All balls in play are included regardless of the pitch speed, and we have roughly 385,000 plays across the 3 seasons. So here we have the velocity heat map that demonstrates the correlation between the pitch velocity and the exit velocity. We see that the exit velocity has a consistent range between 25 miles per hour to above 100 miles per hour. The pitch velocity primarily focuses its range starting at 70 miles per hour up to above 90 miles per hour, with just some pitches being below 70 miles per hour. The yellow patch that we see on the heat map shows us that a good amount of the pitches have had an above 90 mile per hour velocity, resulting in an exit velocity above 100 miles per hour.
So with this data, we ran a regression on the results, which came up with this. Now, pitch speed was a significant variable in predicting that exit velocity, but not with a significant amount of variance explained. The R squared was less than 0.01, which suggests that less than 1% of the variance was explained just by velocity. And I think the wide range of exit velocities with those 70 to 90, 100-mile-an-hour pitches really plays a lot of noise here. On this model alone, you would expect a 1 mile an hour increase in exit velo for every 5 mile an hour of pitch velocity. But clearly, there's more at play here. And the next thought we had was taking away the various pitches and focusing on each one individually. Because each pitch type differs in many metrics. Of course, they have various velocity ranges, which we'll get to in a second, along with some of the movement and break patterns that make them harder to hit than others. And all of those will make exit velocity distributions differ by type. For example, the distributions we found here.
So here we have the density plots that show us the velocity of the ball based on the different pitches thrown. So it could be anything ranging from the curveball, the fastball, the slider, etc. And we see here that the plots are split up by the pitch velocity and the exit velocity. Looking at the pitch velocity density plot, it seems to be quite all over the place, which is expected. So for example, it would be quite odd to see a slow curve ball have the same velocity range as a fastball. Looking at the exit velocity density plot, however, it seems to be a bit more uniform as each pitch type peaks roughly around the same area. But we definitely see how the pitch type can reflect the exit speed of the ball. So for example, taking a look at the 1D plots, in the pitch velocity graph, we see that the slow curve is most often pitched at a velocity slightly above 65 miles per hour. The exit velocity graph, it shows that the batter usually hits a slow curve ball at a velocity of approximately 87 miles per hour. And in comparison to the sinker, it is typically pitched at a velocity above 90 miles per hour, while the batter typically hits a sinker at 100 miles per hour and above. So we see that the speed of the pitch has some type of impact to the ball exit speed from the batter.
So when we take these pitches into account and group them together by some of their like main characteristics, we get these types of regression models. Here we have the four main types of pitches: fastballs, sliders, curveballs, and changeups. And we see that there is a slightly stronger, albeit still very weak relationship once you account for those pitches. I think the more interesting thing we find here in this plot, though, is the fact that fastballs would be expected to have higher exit velocities than other pitch types. As Kirsten mentioned, this was not all that surprising. You would expect a fastball, which is faster, to have a higher exit velocity than, say, a slow curveball or changeups that are typically also much slower. But then that raises another question. If we see that with these fastballs, then in theory, the maximum exit velocity would come on those pitches and we would see a trend there. And that leads into the final part of our analysis. Because one of the big factors about exit velocity is where the ball hits the bat. If you make contact within the sweet spot, you're typically more likely to have those barrels, which have much higher exit velocities and launch angles. Typically, those are your extra base hits or even home runs. So for every mile an hour that a pitch was thrown, from the 30-mile an hour third baseman pitching at the end of blowouts to the fastest pitches in baseball, its maximum exit velocity was recorded. And that data led to one final regression model we have today. This one, which has much more predictive power, suggesting that there is a higher potential exit velocity with faster pitches. In this case, if you increase the speed of your pitch by 4 miles an hour, you would see a maximum exit velocity increase by 1 mile an hour, suggesting that if you wanted to have higher exit velos, your cap on the peak output does actually affect is actually affected on pitch velocity. So in conclusion, while there are other factors that affect a pitch velocity besides just pitch velocity that affects the exit velo, that pitch speed does allow for peak exit velocities to increase and allows for a much wider range of high exit velo outcomes. So going back to the home run derby outcome, I suggest that we remove the soft tosses and replace them with Ben Joyce's 105-mile-an-hour fastball next year and watch these guys really go to town and hit monsters.